In today's show, we're going to be talking about money. Money. It's one of those things that so many people are obsessed with. Some are obsessed with getting just enough to survive. Others are obsessed with getting just more. But do we have to be obsessed to be able to acquire this tool? And really, that's what it is, right? Money is a tool to get the things we need or want in our lives. But sometimes it becomes this overwhelming obsession. If we need more money and we can't seem to figure out how to get it, then we become consumed with the idea of getting more. Is there an easier way? And I'm not just talking about people who want to be uber rich, because believe me, I know if you need more money, if you need enough money to pay the next bill and you don't know how to get it, you can be just as consumed as the person who seems to constantly think about getting richer and richer. The end results, of course, are very different, but that feeling of almost starving for it can be the same. So how can we adjust our thinking so that this tool can serve us in the way it should? My guest today is Dr. Amanda Barrientez, and that has become her focus. And she knows what she's talking about because she has experienced that desperation that comes from not being able to pay the next bill. I would be very interested in hearing your comments about your own experience around money, as well as your insights into Amanda's comments. And I understand this can be a really uncomfortable, even embarrassing topic. Because sometimes we feel like it shouldn't be this hard. Other people make money. Why can't I just make money? And there are certainly different paths to make this happen. Amanda is going to introduce one that she has found to be very effective. So enjoy my conversation with Amanda now. How about you introduce yourself and just tell our listeners what you do and why you love doing it. And then we're going to kind of get into what got you there.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm Dr. Amanda Barrientez, and I do business consulting. So I help people with their mindset, their money, their marketing, and their manifestation. And really, to me, those things are all very intertwined because our mindset is the core of our reality. And I like to think about wealth building as this way to experience freedom. And because it's not something I had a lot in my past. So the more that I increase my wealth, the more I experience freedom. And I'm like, oh, I want everyone to feel this. So, I went from food stamps to building a successful business fast. And it just changed everything for me. And then I started to learn the art and science of manifestation. And that also intersects with aligned marketing, because some people get really stuck in their business where they get confused and there's so much information out there. And I like for people to get from the starting place of where they are to where they want to go as fast as possible. And I think a lot of business owners forget that marketing is an essential part of you getting your message out there. And then that's tied with like sales fears and
It is.
money blocks and all the things that I love to help people break through. So it's kind of the gist of what I do in a long sentenced way.
That's great. So let's start with the fact that, in your own admission, you have not always been as successful as you are now.
Yes,
and
definitely.
You said the transition happened fairly quickly. What is quickly in retrospect? I'm sure the during probably didn't seem as quickly, but how long did it take you to feel some level of, I guess, security, some level of comfort or control?
Yeah. I was on food stamps and then started listening to podcasts, and they changed my life. And all the podcasts I was listening to were from coaches. And I was like, there's something to this coaching thing. And so I ended up, planting the seeds of like, maybe I want to be a coach instead of a professor, because I was in grad school at the time and I was on track to be a professor. And there was a lot of stress in my department and a lot of fear, and the academic culture was just pretty intense. And then I was hanging out with all these coaches, and it was like, life is amazing. And I get to live in my zone of genius and I get to teach and do what I love. And so I started just going, wait a second, maybe I can use the things that I love that I had really experienced that I enjoyed in academia, which was like research and teaching students and, having the light bulbs of awareness go off. And so I was like, I think I'm going to be a coach. And so I ended up going from food stamps to my first full-time year of business. I went 6 figures, and that process took total 3 years.
3 years.
So yeah.
Okay, I want to just jump back to the fear that you observed within academia. What is that about? Because I don't think most people would think of professors and then
Yeah.
immediately jump to fear or insecurities. So, what
Uh,
was that?
It's funny you say that, because I've come to realize it's a huge issue. Like there's like a huge movement of imposter syndrome for academic, for professors. It's a really intense culture, because your whole job, especially as a grad student, is it's like you're getting groomed to be able to take a lot of criticism, because you're submitting paper, you're submitting your research, and you get denied, rejected, 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 and it's like the caliber of work that you must create is very rigorous, and then you're competing against other people who are pretty on it, high achievers, but there's just this really interesting culture of it's an intense culture. And I didn't know it when I got into it. I went into it for this like passion piece, and it was like, oh, I want to help people in the world. My PhD's in sociology, and that's how I stepped into it. But I didn't really realize, the caps on, especially for social sciences. Unfortunately, you got to apply to a lot of jobs. You don't get very many flyouts for the jobs. The pay level is a lot lower than I thought. And the stress level is really high. They call it in academic world like publish or perish. So it's like you have to publish a lot, or you're not able to move up and you can't get tenure. And so it's this like stress for 7 years getting the PhD, then stress for another 7 years getting tenure. And then it's just this constant, I know that not everyone experiences that. And I always tell people your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So it's like, if you can have a powerful mindset in that process, awesome. But your environment definitely affects you. So
Yeah.
it for me, it was one of those decisions of like, I don't want to be in this culture. I'd rather create my own and, build a community around inspiration.
Well, for those who are listening who might identify not with your exact experience, but with that sort of determined goal. And here I'm doing what I want to do, and then having that moment of uh-oh. Again, looking back, retrospect is always so much easier to say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was the right move.
Yeah.
But what would you say to somebody who is now where you were those years ago and struggling? Because then I would imagine there would also be the struggle of fail. Am I a failure? Am I giving up? I've raised all of these expectations. So what would you say to somebody who is in
Yeah.
that position?
It's a great question. And I think people struggle with this a lot. I think about it as, have you heard of sunk cost theory?
No.
It's really interesting. It's when we put a whole bunch of time and energy and money into something, we decide I'm going to keep doing it because I don't want to lose all of the effort and energy and time and money I've put in. But it's a sunk cost because you end up not happy, you end up not fulfilled. So we can push forever if we want to in a direction that we've created for ourselves, or we can consciously choose to go, you know what, there's a ton of lessons I learned from all of my history, and now I get to continue every day choosing, is this aligned with my zone of genius? Is this what I love doing? So for me, it's the courage to take the leap and go, I'm not sure what's on the other side of this, but I know that my fulfillment is of highest priority, because you can't get what you want doing what you hate doing. And so if you're waking up every day feeling a lack of joy, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, unhappy, burdened, like you don't want to get out of bed, or you're just kind of like, or you're just it's just kind of blah, which a lot of people experience, then I think it's time to rethink things and go, am I willing to take the leap to jump into something different, even though it's maybe scary and unknown, and just see what happens? Because why not? Like inspirate to me, I love helping people step into that inspirational fire, because there's an unlimited supply of joy. And then, my company's NFA Money. So it's like you become more magnetic when you're happy and when you're fulfilled and when you feel like you're on fire instead of frustrated and imprisoned really by the life you've created.
And uncertain. I mean, I think that there's one thing to look at the future and recognize, well, I don't have control of everything, versus, oh, I see exactly what my future is, and it
Yeah.
reflects my past.
Yeah.
And I don't like either. but, but I could imagine that having someone like you in your position who has sort of pioneered her own way, whether you had help or not, you had to take the steps. It, it must be nice to have somebody there saying, yep, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. Not just I know what the books say or this is how a market works or any of that stuff, but I
Yeah.
get the fear and the trepidation. I get all of that. Now you used a term a couple of times, your zone of genius, and it's one of those things that could easily be a hashtag. But let's really talk about these things, because
Yeah.
that is one of the issues that I have with being a little hesitant in talking with coaches, is that
Hmm.
sometimes it does become a bunch of sayings.
Like
It's a bunch of
jargony.
platitudes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in talking with you, it was clear that that is not you. You talked a little bit about the things that you've already accomplished outside of this, and it's very cool. So let's talk about that one, the zone of genius. What is
Yeah.
that?
First, give credit where credit is due. So, if you haven't read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, he's the one who coined the term zone of genius. And to me, it just resonates so deeply with living an inspired life. Because for me, one of my blocks was my fear of shining my light. Like fear of outshining other people is how he phrases it. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, I really have that. And it causes you to limit yourself and sabotage yourself from being your fullest version of yourself and your fullest expression of yourself. And the more and more I step into that, the better and better I feel. And so it's just one of those things where you go, I really want to, if you're whoever's listening, like you're sitting there thinking like, what is my zone of genius and how do I figure out how to tap into that? I
Yes.
tell people little steps every day in the direction help you expand more and more. And so you ask yourself, what brings me joy? And you do that. Even if it's a little thing. I mean, I'm talking like it could be, for me, I love trail running. I love nature. I love creativity. And so I love personal growth and development. So I can do those things and just instantly up level how I feel. And so you do that just a little bit. And then you do a little more the next day and a little more the next day. One of those things is asking yourself, like, am I willing to feel better and better every day?
Hmm.
Because we often limit ourselves from feeling good for a lot of unconscious reasons. And of course, no one would say, I want to feel bad. Like we don't express it like that, but we have this underlying belief that it's scarier to feel good, and maybe like the discomfort is more comfortable because at least it's known. It's constantly reframing these things to going, how do I feel today? Because the future doesn't exist, the past is over. Like, how do I feel today? How do I feel right now? What can bring me joy right now? And just keep moving forward in that direction, and then you'll notice things start to shift over time.
So I would like to address some of the blocks that I am aware of, just from some work that I have done personally and in listening to other people. You said something about it being comfortable. You're sort of comfortable in your discomfort. And I understand where that is. I've come to think that it's more like a familiarity. I don't think we're even comfortable in it. Because with that,
Yeah.
there's sort of a resignation. It's like, well, it's not the best, but it's okay. I can be okay with this. But I think the people that I speak with, it's more like it's a yeah, but thing.
Hmm.
It's yeah, but I know this. I
Yeah.
know what this discomfort is, and it's familiar to me. There's always a reason
Yeah.
why whatever the solution is just not going to work for them. Have you
Yeah.
experienced those people?
I don't work with them a lot just because I'm very good at picking out how, the mindset shifts and helping people really quickly go like, okay, I always say your outer world's an expression of your inner world. So if you don't like what you're getting on the outside, you got to start working on what's within. And it's like a radical responsibility approach. So when people are saying, yeah, but it's like, oh, let's switch that instantly. Like, how can you take radical responsibility? Because when you blame others, you lose all of your power. And so, yeah, but is a blaming of an other in some version. It's like, oh, I blame COVID, I blame society, I blame my parents, I blame
Exactly.
whatever, my husband,
Exactly.
my partner, whatever it is,
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I go, okay, let's get rid of that immediately, because you lose all your power to change when you blame other people and constantly make up excuses. Like, I mean, there's this sensitivity I have for people. I understand when you're in, I think of it as victim mindedness and scarcity thinking. It's like I used to be incredibly victim minded and blame everybody around me for my reality. And once I started to shift that and realize, like, oh, I actually do have some agency and some power to change my life, it was so liberating. It's interesting because I think it's scary to do, because on one hand you're like, I'm responsible for my reality. Yikes. And then on the other hand, it's like, I'm responsible for my reality.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly. And
you
I think
know?
that there is a power even in the victimhood, in the martyrdom, because then if something fails, first that's not on you because it's, well, it's the way I was raised or whatever the reason
Totally.
might be, or the fear of going forward. Well, I just can't. So,
Yeah.
you just keep spinning your wheels. Yeah. So that's good that you call them on it immediately.
Yeah.
So by the time a person is willing to work with you, do you feel that they have mainly gotten past kind of the first few things, or do you think they come at every level and you work with all kinds of people?
That's a good question. I think because probably just by the nature of my company name and the nature of the law of attraction, I attract people who are ready. They're
Okay.
like, they don't have the tools necessarily and they're not sure where to go. And that's where I step in, but they're ready to change. Like, they're at that point where they're like, and you and I remember when you and I talked, we talked about my work I did with incarcerated men.
Yes.
And it was like, I was picking at that, trying to understand like what causes you to change. And it was like it came up over and over again. You got to be ready. Like, you've got to be ready. No one else can force you to be ready. Once you're at whatever bottom is for you, whatever epiphany you need to have, whatever, it's really about being so tired of the reality that you're getting that you're like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So I tell people that I had this moment of like epiphany, lying on the floor crying, going like, I'm really freaking tired of my reality. I've got to do something different, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't know all the answers. I don't know who's going to come my way to help me figure this out, but I know that I'm ready. And so it's that attitude that causes the fastest rapid change, from what I have seen with all the work I've done in behavioral sciences, and thinking about like what makes people change. I mean, it's you being ready. You don't have to have the answers, just readiness and willingness.
Do you feel that there is a way to fast forward to get to that point? So if somebody is at that sort of, I've been beaten down, and I don't want to paint them as a victim. I don't believe that most of us are victims. We just have that mentality. So I don't mean to
Yeah.
paint anybody as being crushed. But if somebody is making excuses, but they don't want to be there, they recognize, oh, I hate this about myself, but I don't know how to get to the point where I'm ready. Is
Yeah.
there a way to fast forward?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting because the subcontext of it again is saying, I'm really so tired of it that I'm willing to learn and
Okay.
grow and change and break through my way of thinking. Because usually when we say like, oh, I'm ready and willing, but then you start talking, it's almost like, to me, an indication is complaining versus solution orientation. Because complainers like to complain and they're going to keep creating something to complain about. But it's like, oh, I'm ready, but this. I'm ready, but I work 2 jobs and I'm too tired. I'm ready, but I have 3 kids at home. Like, all these excuses we make, right? And
Yeah.
really, it's choices, and it's about value system. So and I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. John DeMartini. He's like one of my main mentors and just like an incredible human being who has studied a lot of different types of ologies and pieced them together into his what he calls the DeMartini method. And it's about changing and balancing your perspective. And you can, and then values, like values determination. And values are when zone of genius, like he doesn't use the term zone of genius, but to me it's values where you go, what are my highest priority values? Your life will demonstrate it on its own. Like I could watch you for a day and go, what are your highest values? I could know within probably a couple hours of talking to you or hanging out with you. I would be like, oh, I can see what your values are very clearly because you express them in the way that you show up. So for people who are stuck, they've got to learn to change their values so they can
Mm.
change them by doing intentional shifts in the way that you think. So I tell people the only way we change is by choice, which is deciding that we want to do something different, by developmental trajectories like growing up, at 10 you want different things than when you're 40 and 50, or cataclysmic events. And that's the universe kind of knocking you down to wake you up, to get you back into alignment, to help you grow and expand. And so those are the only ways. So we can choose. And part of that choice is going, I'm tired of my reality. I want something different. What am I going to do? So when I was on food stamps and I realized I've never read a book about money, like I've never tried to be wealthier. I didn't know. I just thought it was like some magical mystery that some people had figured out. And then when I realized, like, oh, I can change my values towards wealth building, I started reading everything I possibly could. I started hanging out with wealthy people. I started talking to wealthy people. And then my life completely started to change. And so it was a choice. So, yes, absolutely, you can choose. And it's, yeah, it's just conscious awareness around that choice.
Did you struggle when you got to that point and you were reading the books and you were excited about it? Did you struggle identifying with the people who had the success you wanted? Let me make sure I asked the question right. I could see where myself and a number of people I know would feel like I was other than.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not in a way where I would look at them and have any resentment toward them at all, but kind of like I'm just not one of those people.
Yeah.
So how would I fit in with them? Like
Yeah.
what would I even talk about to somebody who is that successful? Did you have to
Yeah.
deal with any of that?
I used to a lot, but I'd say that was before I shifted my thinking around it because I used to constantly be jealous of wealthy people and then feel like I could never be one of them and then resent them and make up stories that they were somehow bad or wrong or greedy or selfish. Like, oh, they have too much, that kind of thing. So I had a lot of things operating in my money blocks. But I definitely had that idea, like, I'm just not one of them, and they're kind of these special people. Once I started reading and learning and implementing, I realized like anyone can be wealthy. It's a choice. Like, and I really believe that anyone, and I know I have come from a challenged background in a lot of different ways. So I know that not everybody starts at the same place. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a sociologist. So it's like, I know that we have different starting points. Like some people are starting in a, upper class family with a history of,
Right.
a lineage of a ton of privilege. It was not my reality. So I think that's been a huge gift because I also know it's possible for anyone. It's like I'm a first gen college student and, it's like I was a single mom. I'm Native American. Like I had a lot of things that could be working against me and I still have broken through and keep breaking through. And so I go, it's in your mind. And then you set your mind and then you start to access opportunities that you didn't even know existed. And then things come your way that you could have never even imagined possible.
That's manifestation, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my thing with manifestation. I don't get it. So I hear different things. So I
Yeah.
totally believe that if you are goal oriented, if you have your mind set on what you want and you work toward that thing, then you will get that thing. What I have a hard time with though is just like saying it kind of, and you hear that you just put it out into the universe and it will come to you.
No, that's not true.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't want to be disrespectful. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm really truly not disrespecting
Oh,
people
I love it. I
who
love
feel that
that.
way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think, well, how would that happen? And I don't even think I would want that to happen. I love the idea of deciding what I want, working toward what I want,
Yeah.
looking back and being like, I did that. Like I did
Totally.
that thing.
Yeah. your deal and the win-win is you taking action.
Okay.
So this is where people get stuck as they go, law of attraction doesn't work. These things don't work because I said I want it. But what you focus on expands, and what you focus on is what you take action on because you're appreciating it. And it's it's like, never would I say, I so badly want to run a marathon, and I sit on the couch and just imagine and daydream about it. Like, clearly that's not going to work. So
Okay.
I don't know why we think that with things like money, but a lot of us do, like, well, I sit on the couch and I meditate on it and I declare that I want it. That's a part of the process for sure, because you got to have clarity about what you want, but then you take action and then you trust the universe to bring it to you. And in ways that you couldn't necessarily plan is how I think of it. So I always tell people there's 3 easy steps to manifesting. And when I
Good.
say
Let's do
easy,
that then.
it's like you got to break through your BS, but they are easy steps. I think the clearer you are on what you're focusing on, the easier it is to make manifest. The word manifestation just means to make concrete or make tangible, right? So it's like, when we want to go on a vacation, what do? We start researching plane tickets. We start researching how much is the hotel going to cost. We start researching what do we want to do while we're there. And it's so that whole time what you're doing is making it real, because you're seeing it, you're experiencing it, you're feeling it, you're imagining yourself there, and so you create it. And so it's pretty easy for a lot of people to go, I want to go on a vacation, and to create it. That's manifestation. That's all it is.
Oh, well, that
So,
makes it much less like out there.
right, right.
Yeah.
It's just that we get really stuck on thinking, like, I think a lot of people when they talk about manifestation, they're like, but I want $1 million. It's like, okay, let's start with the stair stepper approach and go, where are you at now in your financial reality? Take the next level. And then you get there, and it starts to exponentially grow what you think is possible, because you start to realize that you can create your reality.
Do you remember any experiences that you have had along your journey where that process worked, definitively, that you did it and it worked?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's
Is it
fun
okay
because
to
the more
share?
you the more you practice, the easier it gets, and the more you're just like pinching yourself like, holy moly, so I'll get clear in my journal, like, what's next for me? Like, what's the next big thing? What's the next thing I want to create? And I'll get clear and I state it, and like, I'll have many times I've had like that day something will come exactly in the thing that I was asking for, not in the way I would have expected or planned, but I've learned to not totally plan. I just go, what's the next thing? Okay, I want to up level this part of my business. What resource am I missing here? And then I'll start to write down ideas. And then like I'll get an email with the exact like path to the next
Really?
step. And it's just like mind blowing. So we all have competing commitments. So our unconscious it competes with our conscious if we aren't aligned. So I help people get into alignment, because 95% of us is run by our unconscious and 5% of us is conscious. So that we could say, I want a 6-figure business, right? We could be like, I want a 6-figure business. But underneath we think, I don't know if I'm capable. I don't know how to do it. I'm afraid that people won't like me if I'm successful in business. What if I try and fail? Like, we've got all these underlying beliefs. So really what you're focusing on is all of that. But what you think you're focusing on is, I want a 6-figure business. It could be you're focusing on, I want a 6-figure income, but I'm freaked out about my debt and I'm not willing to invest any money because I'm focused on all the debt. And what you focus on expands. So in law of attraction, it always works. It's just, are you intentionally attracting what you want or unintentionally attracting what you want?
Got it. I would imagine that for some people, as they are writing in their journal what they want, the next big thing. I mean, even as you say that, I can feel myself feeling almost a little guilty.
Ah,
Um, yeah, like, you know what it is? It's this whole "who
yeah,
do you think you are" kind of thing, and I know
yeah,
it has showed up in many areas of my life. Um, but it's interesting that I
yeah,
thought that was gone. I really did, because of the work
yeah.
that I've done. So is that something that you have to revisit, or do you find that you've done the work so much to such an extent that you're okay now?
Such a great question. I love that you asked it, because I think it's so powerful for people to know that it's a lifelong journey.
Okay.
Like, you will break through you'll break through a money belief and a money block, and then you get to the next level and there's a whole nother set of them. So
Okay.
it's like an ongoing journey. And I think of it this way. It's like, it's a developmental, I always look at growth as an upward spiral. of growth. So in the beginning, you're learning and you expand out to the next level, and you have like a quantum leap growth to the next level. And then you ride the wave down, and then you hit the bottom, and then you discover the new level, and then you start to figure it out, and then you get to the top and you break through, and it's another quantum leap. And as I love that visualization, because you're expanding, 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 but it's never ending. And as I expand and my growth, my beliefs expand, and I unlock some of those unconscious layers, I just keep expanding, and then I break through to the next level every time because I'm facing what's coming up.
It just sounds so empowering. And
Yeah.
it sounds much more scientific than the perspective I have heard from many people. From many, it really does sound kind of, I hate to use this term, kind of woo, kind of like it's sort of out there, and you can latch onto it, as opposed to you have responsibility, but you don't have to have total control. You take
Yeah.
responsibility for your life, but you don't have to have complete control of everything.
Yeah.
Um, the term money blocks, that's another term that I think is common, that I think most people think they know what it is. But what would you say? What are some questions that you would say, well, do you experience this, or this? To help
Yeah.
people identify that maybe working with you would be the next step.
It's We use these terms all the time, like, what do these things mean?
Exactly.
I think of it as unconscious thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that prevent you from creating your desired level of financial success.
Say that again,
So
please, so they don't have to rewind it. Say it
yeah,
again.
unconscious thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that prevent you from creating your desired level of financial success. So this is gonna be different for everyone, right? Like, we all have different desired levels of financial success. But the way that I always ask people, they're like, well, do I have money blocks? And I say, do you have the amount of money you want in the bank and feel good about it? And if they say no, you have money blocks. Simple as that.
Simple as
Very, very
that.
simple. And I've never met a person who doesn't. Like, I've worked with people who are on food stamps, all the way to people who are multimillionaires. I don't think I've worked with any billionaires yet, but I've definitely worked with multimillionaires. Money blocks across the board. It's just different ones. It's similar, but different experiences they have of it. Like, sometimes wealthy people, those people who grew up in wealth or people who have attained a lot of wealth, feel guilty about their wealth. They feel wealth shame. They're like, oh, I have too much. I am too much. They hide their money. They feel weird about talking about it. They don't want to
Or
broadcast
give it
it.
away, like, yeah,
Totally. Or they
yeah,
sabotage
yeah.
and lose it. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting things that happen. So, for people listening, if you don't have the amount of money you want, and or you have money but you don't feel good about
That's an
money,
interesting point. Yeah,
right? Then you have a money block,
yeah,
because what money is neutral, right?
right,
Money is just a neutral thing.
right.
So how you feel about it and how you interact with it shows some of your unconscious belief systems around it.
It is interesting the power we give this tool. This
Right?
it's just this tool, and it becomes a weapon
Yes.
against ourselves or against other people if we're not careful. Um,
Totally.
as a photographer, I have to attribute a lot of the success that I've had to another photographer. Her name is Sue Bryce,
Uh-huh.
and she's a business woman. She's an excellent photographer, but she's an outstanding businesswoman. And she makes this one point that you choose your pain.
Mhm.
So maybe you're here and you want to do more, but you're afraid of it, so you have pain. Okay, well then you choose the pain you're in of being dissatisfied where you are. But either way, you choose your pain, which means you also choose the outcome. And
Yeah.
the first time I heard that, I think was the first time I thought, okay, it's time to be responsible. It's time to just accept it. And that
Yeah.
is not to be condescending or insulting to people who are struggling. Not
Yeah.
at all. But the fact is, even being a victim at some point is a choice. It
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah.
And I love that
Yeah.
saying that you choose your pain. You choose your pain,
Yes.
whichever it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I've always
true.
thought that was so good.
I love this. Yeah. Today, so I have what I've created that will really what I think everyone listening, if they're resonating with what we're talking about, they'll love it. It's Money Blocks Profile. So if they just go to moneyblocksprofile.com, they'll take an assessment basically that will show them their main money block and then give them tips on how to overcome it. I'm
Wow.
like, it's probably the thing I'm most excited about that I've created so far in my adventures in my business building, because it's like so many, it's all the years of learning, working with people and doing money stories with people, and then talking about money, and then my own experiences, and realizing like we have some really common money blocks that come up very specifically. And it's, yeah, and I love helping people break through that, because once you break through those things, you really get to create freedom, time, money freedom is time freedom. And time is a thought around things too, because as we said, money is neutral. So it's like, how do you feel about the way you spend your time? And that's often related to money, because people get really freaked out. Like, I got to work all the time. That's a
Yeah.
money block. I'm afraid of the responsibility of money because it might take away my time freedom. That's a money block. Like there's just a whole bunch of wild stuff that comes up. And so it's to me, it's such a cool tool to get to the insight and the inner workings of people and what they're believing and feeling, so they can break through it in a conscious way and, get where they want to go, wherever it is that they want to go.
One thing that I think is so fascinating in speaking with people who have wealth and people who don't is this misnomer that the people who are wealthy are materialistic, whereas the people who are
Yeah.
not cannot be materialistic. But of course they can be, because
Yeah.
if your entire life is focused on getting things, you are materialistic. And
Totally.
people can be wealthy and just be like take care of their
Yeah.
responsibilities and not even really think about the money anymore. I've seen that happen
Yeah. Oh
where
yeah.
they, as they built their wealth, they went from being totally consumed with getting more money to getting to the point where they were fine. They had
Yeah.
what they wanted and they were fine with it. And it was
Yeah.
no longer the distraction that it was for them when they had nothing. And it
Yes.
seems like such a contradiction.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible epiphany about money, because really, realistically, when you're impoverished, you think about money probably 500 times more than
Of
someone who's
course,
wealthy. I mean, I thought about money, realistically, at least 100 times a day, at least.
you have to.
And it was worry and fear
Right.
and scared, and I wasn't generous because I was afraid
Right.
to be generous. I mean, like, the more money I make, the more generous I am, which it's, I always tell people, like, be do have model. It's like, start being generous now, even if you have barely any money. Just give away $1 to someone on the street. Like, just start playing with generosity, because that's showing that you think money is abundant and it's going to keep flowing to you, versus like, I gotta hoard it because I'm terrified I'm never gonna get enough or never gonna have more. And yeah, I was so blocked in those ways. So I love that you say that, because it's so true. I think about it too, like when we're stuck in a place of inner critic beat up and self doubt, we often have this charge against narcissistic people. And if we really think about it, it's incredibly narcissistic to be stuck in self doubt and fear, because all you're doing is thinking about yourself all the time.
Wow.
Right? So
Powerful.
it's just an interesting revelation where you're like, wait a second. The world isn't the way I always judge it to be.
Interesting. Yeah. And as you're describing that person who doesn't want, who's really tight fisted, no matter how much money they have, they'll probably always be that
Totally.
way because
Yeah,
they're thinking their security is not in getting, but in getting more.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What a fun job you have to help people through
Thank
this.
you. I
Have you,
love it.
do you know
Yes.
John Hodgman? Have you ever heard of John Hodgman? He's an
No.
author. He is not a business author. He's actually a comedian. But anyway, he wrote this book, Vacation Land. It's hilarious. And he was on
Nice.
This American Life. But he went from having nothing. He grew up having money, and it didn't mean much to him. But he never developed the tools to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And then he didn't have any money, and then he suddenly got money. And he made the observation that people say money can't buy happiness. He said, but it can buy the things that can allow you to be happy. If
Yeah.
you have money, then it allows you the time to spend with your family.
Yeah.
And of course, that can go way the other way. You can be
Yeah.
consumed with getting more and more and more.
Totally.
But I
Yeah.
thought It's kind of a balanced view. There is a balanced view
Yeah,
to it.
I love you bring up so many good points, Lisa, because the one that you're bringing up right now is it's like we often want to demonize money and or place all of our happiness in money. And again, it's a neutral tool, right? So it's just an amplifier of what is. So if you're a generous person and you get more money, you're going to be more generous. If you're a jerk and you get more money, you're probably going to be a jerk, more of a jerk. Like it's not the money that's doing that; it's what's within you. And so it's like this constant experience of like, yeah, money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy freedom because it is the stream of flow of value exchange we have in our culture. So it's like, okay, let's buy freedom so that we have the ultimate opportunity to be free ourselves and liberate others to be free and fully expressed. And I love to think about it that way. I go like, of course I want buckets of money because I get to do everything I love to do every day. And what I love to do is help other people inspire themselves to do what they love to do. And then you generate that in the world. And it's just this, it's like for you, have as much money as you possibly can and create the most incredible art, which uplifts people's spirits. I mean, what a gift you get to bring to the world. If
Mm,
you don't have money, it's not that you have to be unhappy if you don't have money, because there's plenty of people who don't have a lot of money and they're totally happy. So
yes.
it's the way you think about
Yes.
it and it's your perception around it. And it's what kind of freedom. And I do think a lot of, for me, it's tied around impact. Like the more money I have, the bigger of an impact I can make, because I'll be living so much in my zone of genius at all points in time that that's just a magnetic, expansive force. And I
Mm,
get to help raise the consciousness of the planet through my work. And like, awesome, bring it on,
yes.
I want that for everyone.
I want to just touch on what might be a sensitive subject to some people, and if it is to you, then we don't have to talk about it. But I know for a lot of people who are religious, it's
Yeah.
a tricky thing. And I am a spiritual person. In fact, my faith is hugely important to me. But I think that there is another misconception around religion because people will say that money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And the scriptures, I read it, it does not say that. It does say the
Yeah.
love of money or making it kind of a god to you.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing. But that doesn't go against or contradict what you're saying. You're even acknowledging that it isn't that it's the thing, it's a thing. It's a
Yeah.
thing. So what would
Yeah.
you say would be your goal that money is a part of? Or would you say that the money itself is the goal for you? What would you say?
Now, and I think it's a great question. First, I want to say I love you validating so much like the money blocks, the three money blocks. One of them is money is bad, and it's that idea that money is the root of all evil. And a lot of people have it. It even in spiritual circles, it could be I can't be spiritual and be rich,
Right.
or like it's not spiritual to be rich, or there's just so many blocks around that. And so I think that's a really significant one that a lot of people get stuck with. And it's just not true. Like money can be the giver of all good. Like the more money you have, the more of an impact you get to make, like I was saying. So yeah, I think, oh man, I just lost my thread of thought.
Yeah, let me ask it
Yeah.
in a different way because I'm not
Yeah.
sure that I even asked it the way I meant it. So if somebody is struggling with that,
Hmm.
and I'll be honest, that was one thing I had to really, really work through because growing up with absolutely nothing and being spiritual,
Hmm.
to me, I tied them together,
Yeah,
that they had to go
totally.
together.
Yeah.
But then other people who I love, respect, and admire who are spiritual had
Yeah.
money. And they were
Yeah.
fine. It's just that it wasn't their goal in life. It was a
Yeah.
tool that they recognized allowed them to have the life that they wanted. And for other people, as you rightly acknowledged, they didn't need more money and they were totally fine too.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love that your focus is the mindset. So, what do you say to those people who struggle with that?
I'm glad you're asking this because I'm sitting here thinking, like, can you just be in pursuit of money only and be really fulfilled? If your highest value is wealth and money, I still think ultimately, like, what the meaning we make out of things is what makes it valuable. So it's like the money itself is just a neutral tool that we've assigned meaning to. Like we've assigned the meaning to money. So what is the meaning of why you're pursuing the quest of getting that money has to do with who you are now in the moment. Like, is it generosity? Is it like you want to travel and experience the world? There's nothing wrong with having money and treating yourself I believe we're beings who want to be really creative. Like we have this big brain for a reason, you know, and we want to expand and explore and grow. And in the way that we've constructed society, that takes money. And so it's like I hear this where people go like, shouldn't it be that I have to have the quest of wanting it to change everyone in the world? Like, is it wrong for me to like want to explore and travel and have fun? And it's kind of that concept like money is bad and it's not spiritual. Like if I'm succeeding and successful and rich, then somehow it's not spiritual or other people have to suffer.
Right.
You know, like if I'm rich, someone else suffers. And it's not like that.
I would think that the value of what is being passed on to generations to come, even just the blocking of the old blocks and reversing that is huge.
Absolutely.
Because it's exhausting being poor.
Oh my God.
Especially if you,
Yes.
I mean, I absolutely think that people can be happy with minimal. I really do. And if that's the choice they make, I absolutely do believe that.
Yeah.
But if you can't take care of yourself,
Yeah.
that is exhausting. If you can't care for the needs of your family,
Totally.
that's consuming. It's all consuming.
Absolutely. I was like, oh, the worst fear ever when you're sitting there going, I don't know. I mean, I was like, I don't know. I'm going to feed my kids. I'm not sure where I'm going to live. I mean, I have family and friends that would take me in, but that's, you know, it's like I'm 43 now, you know, so this wasn't that long ago. And it's just like, it's exhausting and terrifying. And just being in that level of survival mode threat all the time is awful. I mean, I think the key takeaway I want people to have is that your outer world is an expression of your inner world. So if you don't like what you're seeing within, if you don't like what you're seeing without, start working on what's within. And really, just if you know that, your whole life can change pretty rapidly if you just start going, okay, how can I shift myself, and just start reading and learning everything you possibly can and watch your outer world change. It's pretty phenomenal. I wish I would have known sooner. I mean, it's just amazing to see how fast you can change your reality by focusing on what's within.
I love that, because that's not even about money. Money is just the result of the work.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, I am very curious to get the answer to the question then. As you know, how do you want to be seen? It's the umbrella under which all of my work is done with my portraits, my businesses, I mean my business clients, and then this podcast. So you have been on at least two sides of the issue, and maybe more depending how you look at it. But from where you've been to where you are and where you want to go, how would you answer the question? How do you want to be seen?
I love this question so much. When I read it and when I found you, my eyes filled up with tears because I thought about it and I was like, I want to be seen as an inspiration, like an inspiration to help people shine their light as brightly as possible and feel good. Like that's what I want for people. I want to feel that way myself, and I want people to feel that way about me. I want them to think of me and go, she is an inspirational force. And it's such a liberating gift that I've gotten to experience. And I love to be the teacher who gets to help people do that.
Very nice. Thank you for the time you took today, and really for sharing a lot of yourself that was probably not very pleasant at the time. So for your willingness to look back and share that. Thank you for that. It's so generous of you.
Yes. Thank you for having me on. I could chat with you all day long.
It's so interesting to me because money is one of those, it's one of those conversations that also feels like you're talking about emotional issues, because really it's one of the only things, the only tangible objects that we have in our lives that we seem to have this strange master-servant relationship with. And being able to flip it so that we are in control and it serves us is a reasonable goal. But as you probably already know, and you heard Amanda and I talk about in the conversation, that doesn't always fit. It doesn't mean, though, that it can't fit. We get to decide. I love that thought in so many areas of life, that we get to decide. And with that decision comes empowerment, and with that empowerment comes change. But very interesting that Amanda has herself walked this path. So, if you have any comments, I really would be interested in hearing them. I would be interested in hosting a sort of roundtable around this discussion. So, if this is something that piques your interest, please leave a note or a voicemail in the comment. And as always, I will ask you to continue to be safe, to always be kind, and sincerely thank you for listening.